Thank you for the opportunity for coming today. Before I get started, I do want to make sure everybody's got a copy of the catalog so they can kind of look with me.
Is anybody else? Oh, you got your copy? Okay.
It is a pleasure for me to come and talk to you today about the Osher Institute. As Dwight said, we do enrichment courses, short courses for folks over 50. Is there anybody in the crowd that meets that requirement?
I'll be there soon.
Soon, it won't be long now. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome. Okay. Thank you. Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Good, thank you. I do see some of our Osher colleagues here, some of the folks who have taken Osher classes already. So some of this may know already, but I'm sure that hopefully they'll learn something new. The Osher Institute has been here at KU since 2004. We were chartered by the Osher Foundation. The Bernard Osher Foundation was founded by Bernard Osher in the 1970s. Bernard is an 87-year-old billionaire who lives in San Francisco and has made his money. He was originally from Maine, Biddeford, Maine, where his parents owned a hardware store. And he worked in his parents' hardware store, went to Bowdoin College, and then went to work on Wall Street in finance for Oppenheimer and stuff. And then in the early 60s, he moved to California, where he and several other people started the World Savings Bank, which grew to be the second largest savings bank in America. And they sold that to Wachovia in the 1990s. In the 1970s, Mr. Osher also purchased Butterfield and Butterfield, which is the fourth largest fine arts auction house in the world, and he sold that to eBay in 2000. So Bernard has some cash, and he wants to spend it. God bless him. So he has, Business Week magazine named him the 11th most generous philanthropist in the world. He gave away $800 million in the last few years. And he has founded 120 Osher Lifelong Learning Institutes across the country. And they're all associated with colleges or universities. The first one was founded in 2000, and then by 2004, KU Continuing Education made an application to the foundation, and we were chartered in 2004. We held our first classes here in Lawrence. Excuse me. We started classes just at the Continuing Education building on 15th and St. Andrews Drive, the old Mop and Tour building, if everybody knows where that is, and where we continue to hold classes. And we were also doing classes at Brandon Woods Retirement Community back in 2004. As Dwight said, since that time, we have now grown to hold classes in 17 cities at many sites. If you look on the catalog, on the back of the catalog, you'll see a map that shows the sites in northeast Kansas that we hold classes, and all of those classes are found in this catalog. We also do classes, and this is going to maybe surprise many of you, on the campus of Kansas State University. In 2010, KU and K-State entered into an agreement between the two continuing education units for the KU Osher Institute to come onto their campus and hold classes. So we do classes at K-State. We also do classes at Washburn, at Ottawa University. We do classes at Hutchinson Community College, and there are 3 campuses, which are in Hutchinson, McPherson, and Newton. And we do classes in Heston and other communities as well in our South Central region. We now hold classes in 16 residential communities. Many of them are listed in this catalog. You'll look in this catalog, and you can see that all the classes that are in Lawrence are in the front of the catalog, but we also do classes in Ottawa, in Olathe, Overland Park, Mission, Prairie Village, Kansas City, North Kansas City, up in Clay County, Missouri, so that we offer those classes in a lot of different areas. We're very fortunate, and I know Mr. Attorney has taken classes. Can you tell me what has been your favorite class?
All of them.
You have one?
I can't think of one.
Okay, Eleanor?
It's a favorite at this.
Eleanor has taken classes too, and I know that we have John Mack as one of our instructors, is among the popular instructors.
Yes, he is.
We are very fortunate to have, the reason that we have, this last year we had 2,745 people take classes through the Osher Institute. And the reason that we have so many people is because of the quality of our instructors. We have about 100 instructors that teach for us at various times during the year, when their schedules permit. Many of them are current or former KU faculty, or Washburn faculty, or K-State faculty who teach for us. And we welcome a lot of people from the community who teach. We were just talking a little bit earlier, we do a class called When the Fat Lady Sings, an Introduction to Opera. And that class is taught by Don Dagenet, but Don Dagenet isn't in music. He's a lawyer who practices real estate law in Kansas City, but he teaches a class on opera. So there are people who teach classes for us who have interest in a lot of different things and want to share their interest and their knowledge with people in the community. Our courses are usually just 3 weeks long, 3 two-hour sessions, so they're relatively short in time. We tried, when we first started, doing semester-long courses, but nobody wanted to take a semester-long course, and nobody wanted to teach a semester-long course, because nobody wanted to commit that much time to the course. So we've kind of tried a few different things, and we've ended up now with these 3 two-hour sessions. About half of our classes are afternoon classes from 2 to 4, and the other half are evening classes from 7 to 9. As you can imagine, most of the classes in the afternoon are attended by retirees, people who are not still in the workforce, and our evening classes are attended by more of the public. The average age of our Osher Institute member is 75 years old, and I think that age is higher because of the number of residential community members that we have in the 16 residential communities that we have. I will say that 2/3 of our participants are women, so if you know any men who are in their 70s and are single, the Osher Institute is the place to maybe find some companionship. So if you look at your catalog, if we get to start on page 4, you can see some of the scope of the classes that we have. We have, as I mentioned, the instructors make a big difference for us. Our first class of the season this year was Bernini, taught by Ann Wicklund. Ann is a well-known art historian, among the most popular classes. In fact, she's teaching this class twice for us, once during the day and once at night this semester. In fact, it's going on right now. Chris Wiles teaches the class of globalization. Chris, anybody know Chris? Chris is the Associate Director of the Honors Program here on campus. Chris is probably, if he's lucky, 30 years old. Chris is the youngest person ever to receive a PhD from Cambridge University. And so he's a pretty bright guy, and he likes to talk on issues like globalization. He also teaches courses on politics for us as well, and it's quite good. Paul Laird's teaching a class on Bernstein, Leonard Bernstein. Paul is a professor of musicology at KU, and he's teaching that class for us. Marilyn Klaus is teaching a course out of Brandon Woods on the American quilt. Eleanor, are you taking that class?
On what?
On the quilt class, did you take?
I've taken one earlier.
Well, she's taught that before, that's right, she has taught that before for us. So she's teaching that one. Kelly Hunt, does anybody know Kelly Hunt?
Oh, yeah.
Kelly Hunt is a very well-known local singer. Kelly is teaching 2 courses for us, for her Joyful Singing for Everyone class. It's a great class, people come in and she basically encourages them to sing and explains the benefits of singing, especially singing in a group. And it's a pretty fun class. And I will tell you this, and this I want you to remember. In fact, let's go change if you'll turn your hymnals to page 26. This is where our special events are listed. Kelly Hunt, there on the left-hand column, is going to do a concert here in Lawrence, her only Lawrence concert this spring, at the Theater Lawrence for the Osher Institute. So that's 2 weeks from today is going to be that concert at 7 o'clock over at the Lawrence, Theater Lawrence, the new Theater Lawrence. So I encourage you, if you enjoy Kelly, and she's a great entertainer, she's going to be doing her only hometown concert on March 12th. Mike Yoder, many of you probably know Mike Yoder, the photographer for the Lawrence Journal World, is teaching a class on digital photography. A lot of us know now we have such easy access to digital photography, either with our phones or with our good cameras. Mike is introducing the technology and how to use it in his class. And it's a very popular class. He's taught it 5 semesters in a row for us now, and we've nearly filled every class. One of our science classes on page 6 then is going to be Elizabeth Smith, who's going to teach about social insects, bees and ants, and how their structure works and why they are so necessary for our environment. I think everybody probably saw the article that was in the paper not long ago where KU lost its bee colony during the big snowstorm, and so they're going to have to recolonize their bee population over there. Mark Burgess is teaching a class on the French Revolution. Mark is an instructor up at Fort Leavenworth at the Command College. He's taught this class for us several times in the Kansas City area, but he wanted to come and teach it in Lawrence this semester because his daughter is a senior here at KU and she's graduating. So he gave him an excuse to come into Lawrence and to see his daughter before she graduates. Then Jerry Massington. Jerry Massington is a retired professor of English here at KU, and he's teaching a course on short stories. This is his second iteration of this class. He taught an earlier one last semester, and so this is his second one of that. Jan Kozma, another retired KU faculty, was in the Department of Italian and Portuguese for many years, just retired this last year. Is teaching a course on Italian civilization from the Etruscans to Pompeii. Jan obviously teaches Italian. She has been to Italy 78 times, so she knows her way around. And she teaches a lot of not just this course, but she teaches a course on Italian cheeses for us, and she teaches a course on the geography of Italy. John Mack is an incredible instructor. He's got a PhD in theology and a PhD in history with an emphasis on American history. He's teaching this course, this Thinkers Who Changed the United States. He also teaches a course on the Supreme Court. He teaches a course on Thinkers Who Changed the World. And he teaches a course on Reel to Reel, which is about how history is depicted in film, and goes through several films like Gone with the Wind, and how accurate that is in depicting history. He also does the King's Speech. You know, that was a very famous, that won the Oscar just a couple years ago, and so he analyzes those films. So John is an eclectic instructor for us and very popular. Sean Alexander is a professor in American and African American Studies, and he's teaching a class on slavery, the history of slavery from 1619 to the present. So I think, and he's a very popular instructor. Kim Warren is an associate professor of history, and she's teaching a course called The Role of Music in the Freedom Movements of the 1950s to 70s. And she talks about how the movements both inspired music and how the music inspired the movements. And she's a new instructor for us. In fact, she's on the cover. She's the young lady right here. That's Kim Warren, who's teaching that class. The Chancellor was kind enough to grace the cover of our catalog this semester because we wanted to acknowledge the support that we get from the university. Larry Welch. Larry Welch has just retired a couple years ago as director of the Kansas Bureau of Investigation and has written a book on the history of the KBI. And so he's teaching a class on the history of the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. And he goes into some of the case studies, the ones that you're probably familiar with, the Clutter case, the Harold Clutter case, the In Cold Blood case that took place down in Holcomb, Kansas. That was the case that really brought the KBI into national attention. And he goes all the way up and also talks about the BTK case and how they, after 24 years, were able to track down Dennis Rader for that serial killer in Wichita. So it's a very fascinating case. Larry's a great storyteller. I think if you enjoy that kind of history of police work, you would enjoy that class. Jennifer Weber is a Lincoln scholar. She writes and studies Lincoln. She teaches a course on Abraham Lincoln about whether he was a statesman or a tyrant, depending upon what some of the documents she's uncovered about Lincoln, about how his interpresidency, how the presidency worked while he was president. So if you're a Lincoln fan, I will tell you this, of all of our topics, history is by far the most popular that we do. And within history, the umbrella of history, Kansas history is among the most popular. And we have lots of Kansas history courses, though not quite as many this semester as we have in past semesters. But Lincoln it was a very popular course. She taught it at the Edwards campus for us last semester, and she filled that class. Anybody know Leo Barbie, Reverend Barbie?
Sure.
Reverend Barbie is going to teach a class for us this semester. He and his wife both are going to teach a class on the history of church music, and going everything from covering the Negro spirituals and the turbulent times that inspired them to the music that we hear today. He's actually teaching this class at his church, the Victory Bible Church down on Massachusetts, 20th and Mass. And his wife is a retired music teacher, a music educator, and she's going to be accompanying him while we listen to music and we sing music during his course. Then James Gunn. If any of you are science fiction fans, I'm sure you're familiar with that name. Dr. Gunn is probably one of the foremost authorities on science fiction in the world. He's retired, has been retired for a while, but he's got a new book coming out called Transcendental. I think that's the name of it. Yes. And he's going to be teaching this class for us the first time in April out at our building on 15th and Bob Billings. Chad Lawhorn. I'm sure we all enjoy reading Chad's columns in the Journal World and his blog online. Chad is teaching his first class for the Osher Institute this semester, and he's going to just kind of reminisce about some of the most interesting people he's met, some of the most interesting stories he's covered on Lawrence history and people in Lawrence. And that class will start in April as well. Again, an evening class out at our building on St. Andrews Drive. Then Ashley Davis. Anybody know Ashley Davis? Mm-hmm. Ashley Davis is an Irish folk singer. She's a native of Lawrence, but she sings Irish folk music. Ashley is teaching a course for us on the roots of Irish and American folk music. Ashley has a master's degree in traditional Irish music from the University of Limerick in Ireland. In fact, I just got an email from her this morning. She just got back from Ireland, and she's going to teach. She was explaining to me that when early Irish immigrants came to this country, many of them settled in the Appalachian area, and it was the influence of Irish folk music that had a strong influence on our early American folk music and bluegrass as we know it. And she traces that as she plays the music and sings songs for you during this class as well. And I again invite you to turn your hymnals to page 25. And you'll see there on the last column that Ashley is also doing a concert for the Osher Institute. This is going to be the weekend before St. Patrick's Day, but it's going to be at the Edwards campus, over at Rainier Hall on the Edwards campus. And she's going to be doing the songs. She's going to be joined by Cormac DeBarra, who is an internationally known harpist, and then two local musicians, Megan Horn, who plays the violin, and Joseph Carmichael, who's a great banjo and mandolin and guitar player that will be accompanying her at the Edwards campus. That will be a week from Sunday in the afternoon over at Rainier Hall. So in the last class that we're going to have in Lawrence is going to be on pastel painting. Many of you are into art and always wanted to do a little bit of pastel painting. This class is going to be taught by Barb Solberg, a very well-known local artist, and she's going to be teaching it at the Jewish Community Center. That has a space that better accommodates the kind of open area that pastel painting needs that our classroom doesn't quite accommodate. So she's going to be teaching that class there. So any questions about the Lawrence classes? Or how you can take these classes? Any of these classes that haven't started yet, many of them have not started yet, obviously. You're welcome to enroll in those. A single class for the Osher Institute, so you know, costs $40 for one class. If you take two classes, there are two classes for $75. And if you take three classes, that's $100. And every class after that is only $10 a class. So you can take as many classes as you want. And most of the classes are still open, although a couple of the classes have closed because they are so popular. So any questions on that? Yes, sir.
How many people are in the class?
It depends upon where we hold the class. Now in Lawrence, these classes, at our building on St. Andrews Drive, our classroom, the fire marshal says we can't have any more than 58 people in those classes. So we do fill some of those. Most of the classes are usually 30 to 40 people in them. And then we also hold classes out at Brandon Woods. And Brandon Woods, we can hold more people there. because they have a larger space there. But they usually have about 35 or 40 people.
Is that in the Smith Center?
It's at the Smith Center at Brandon Woods, right? Yes.
Is there a minimum number of people that in a class, or some of them canceled, in other words?
Well, you know what? We cancel classes almost never. I mean, my belief is, as the director, we just had a class that started the other night at the Edwards campus, had 6 people in it. Now, it was a night class. It was the night we were playing Oklahoma. So I have a feeling that might have influenced some people not to attend the class. But I chose not to cancel the class because, first of all, you don't want to disappoint anybody that signed up for a class. And you don't want to get a reputation as an organization that you cancel classes. Like, well, I don't want to sign up for it because then they'll cancel it and then I won't be able to go. So my belief is, the only time I've ever canceled a class is when the instructor has gotten sick and couldn't teach. And we postpone classes thanks to Mother Nature. Occasionally we'll have to postpone a session, but to answer your question directly, there is no minimum number that we have to have. Now, we like to have more than 6 for a class, but we rarely cancel. Any other questions?
Well, I'd like to commend Pastor Barbie. I finally, as I got here 18 years ago, and I attended a few of his funerals, and he needed no accompaniment, and boy, he has a reputation for being a singing pastor, and he gets a lot out of people. So it'd be an enjoyable experience, I would think.
Well, I can tell you that that's exactly how I came to contact Reverend Barbie about doing a class, is somebody came and told me exactly that kind of story. That if you, because I tell you, one of the things we wanted to do was to try and do more outreach to the African American community. We have not been very successful in attracting more African Americans to our classes. I don't know if that's because they have to go all the way out to our building, or they don't want to come on campus, or whatever the reason may be. So that's why when I contacted Reverend Barbie and asked him if he would teach that class at his church, he was more than happy to do it. He's not shy about that. I think he's well known as a singer. I haven't heard him sing yet, but I hear he's a great singer, and I hear his wife accompanies him during his church services, and so I'm sure she'll be great as well. So I think it'll be an interesting class for sure. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
When I first came 18 years ago, I was encouraged by professors, 2 different professors, to take their classes. And at that time, I could audit the class and do it with no charge. Is that still possible at this university?
It is. That's an interesting question you asked that. That reminds me, I serve on a task force that the chancellor has established called Retiree Outreach Task